Hello, and welcome to Same Crime, Different Time. I'm Jennifer Chambers. You know that I'm passionate about uncovering the truth. Here, we're taking that passion to the dark heart of the Pacific Northwest. As a true crime and historical writer, I've spent years immersed in the chilling archives of this region. Each week, we'll explore cases, both ancient and modern, of murder, unexplained events, strange places, and those who have simply vanished. We'll dig into the research, connecting the dots between past and present, revealing the threads of mystery that weave through our incredible, yet often unsettling, landscape. Prepare to be captivated as we discover that while times may change, the darkest aspects of human nature remain hauntingly the same. I'm Jen Chambers, and this is Same Crime, Different Time. We have a different case today. It relates to Oregon, tangentially, but it was just such an awful case. And fascinating in its own way, so I thought I'd share today. In the mid-1970s, the Soviet town of Aleksandrov was a place of rigid order and gray permanence. But beneath the surface of the socialist paradise, quote-unquote, something was rotting. A shadow moved through the forests near the railway stations there. This was a predator that the local press was forbidden from mentioning. While the Western world was captivated by the hunt for the Golden State Killer or for Ted Bundy, the USSR was dealing with its own ghost, Vladimir Sarenpya. He wasn't a monster from a movie. He was a worker at a local plant there. This was a man who was reportedly born in Coos Bay, Oregon, according to many records, but whose family moved to Russia and lived in the gaps of a system that claimed that crime didn't exist in their perfect society. Today, on Same Crime, Different Time, we examine Sarenpya, who is also known as the Aleksandrovsky Ripper. Pardon me, I'm going to butcher the Russian in this story. I have looked up and tried to pronounce everything a million times, but I will definitely get it wrong. I also want to examine the terrifying silence of the area that allowed him to kill. To understand Sarenpya, you have to understand the area called the Vladimir Oblast in 1975. This wasn't the Oregon coast. This was the industrial heart of the USSR. And there aren't, unfortunately, a lot of records. We don't know why his family moved to the USSR, other than that they reportedly were socialists. I've also read that they were communists, but we don't all know how those can be conflated. But we do also know that Sarenpya was born into this Russian culture. This culture that they called, quote, Vospitani, which is the word for a strict Soviet upbringing. In this era, the state emphasized the collective over the individual. Mental health issues were often treated as political deviance or simply ignored. We don't have a lot of concrete facts about his childhood. We do not have any evidence that, as many killers have been, that he was abused in his childhood or that there was violence. We don't know what made him do what he did. Interesting, because he really wasn't reported, so he wasn't ever really looked at. We do know that he married and that he worked at the plant in the middle of town. And that's kind of where his story actually begins, as far as records. There are some concrete facts that we have. Sarenpya worked at a place called the Aleksandrovsky radio plant. This was a massive facility in the town. The Aleksandrovsky radio plant produced the famous televisions that were known as the record televisions at the time. And it seems that he lived himself a double life. He was a quiet and unremarkable laborer by daytime, and a calculated stalker as soon as dusk fell. It's interesting, from some of the things I have found, the Soviet authorities at the time had their own mantra, which was, quote unquote, serial killers are a capitalist disease. I feel like this ideological blindness gave Sarenpya one of his greatest weapons, which was anonymity. People don't know what to watch out for if they don't know what's there. The timeline of Sarenpya's violence is short, but it's also brutal and rapidly escalating. We don't have to speculate on some things. The Soviet archives that were declassified decades later tell a chilling story of this predator who practiced his cruelty. His first known victim was on September 27th, 1975. He attacked a woman who was on a bicycle near the town of Bakshivo. He used a stone as a weapon to bludgeon her, brutally. She did survive, but the police treated it as a random robbery. They didn't look at it as the start of a spree or anything like that. Then, the turning point was on November 14th, 1975. There were other victims in between, but they have not been able to definitively link them to him. So on November 14th of 1975, Titania Berezneva was an 18-year-old radio installer. She was walking home from the Aleksandrov radio station. Lying in wait, Sarenpya attacked her with a hammer and raped her, and he ended up murdering her with that hammer. He was known, as I said at the beginning, as the Ripper, and this is where that moniker took hold. Sarenpya left bite marks on all of his victims. It was his display of dominance, I guess, or primal something. By January of 1976, he had moved on from stones and hammers and used metal bars to attack people. He attacked a woman at the very engineering plant where most of the community worked. It was crazy, though, because they didn't report it. So the fear in Aleksandrov must have been palpable. But because of the Soviet media censorship, there weren't any breaking news alerts. These women just seemed to start disappearing from all the paths around the forest. Sarenpya was eventually caught, but he wasn't caught by using high-tech forensics. He was actually caught by the same collective system that he lived in. After the murder of a woman at the plant, Inna Gajuchin, in March 1976, police finally connected his bite marks and all of the bite mark evidence to the proximity to the railway lines. Now, the reality of Soviet justice. In the USSR, the path from arrest to execution was actually pretty swift. Sarenpya was tried in the Vladimir Regional Court, where he was found guilty of multiple murders and dozens of assaults. In 1977, Vladimir Sarenpya was sentenced to the highest measure of punishment, death by firing squad. There was no decades-long appeal process. In the Soviet Union, once the state decided that you were a social parasite, you were erased. The Aleksandrovsky Ripper was summarily disappeared. Vladimir Sarenpya is a reminder that violence doesn't care about your economic system or your borders. Whether in the woods of Oregon or the forests of Vladimir, the patterns of this kind of predator remain the same. They look for the isolated. They exploit things like gaps in the system. And they count on our silence. Obviously, the culture of that area of the world and the United States is different today. But it's interesting to think of how many women could have been saved from assaults or murders if the truth was simply told about them. I'm only using the names of the victims that were publicly known. I have found several other names, but I'll keep their anonymity. I really am interested in this case because it just seems like his violence exploded out of nowhere. And you know that that's not the only thing that happened with this person. He didn't start out just being a creepy stalker and killing and raping people. There had to have been other points on that escalation. But it's fascinating to think of a culture that was so closed. They just refused to believe that that happened. I'm very glad that he was caught and that those women got some kind of justice. I thought his case was interesting and a good one to start the new year with. To remember that maybe sometimes look beyond places we're told not to look and be cautious all the time. That's always a good reminder. Stay grounded, stay safe, and we'll talk about a new case next week. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks for listening today. Please review and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. That really helps out the show. And please leave us a voicemail at the Spotify link. Also, you can always feel free to send us an email at scdtmail@gmail.com or www.jennifer-chambers.com.